What is up, everybody? Welcome to the inside of my car. I'm on my way back to the garage right now. As you'll see in this video, we ran into an issue during the project. What we were working on was replacing the half shaft bolts in the 2006 Ford GT. The 05 and 06 GTs had a known failure point. The two small Allen head bolts that hold in the half shafts to the Ricardo transaxle in the back were known to fail. So Accufab sells a great kit to replace the bolts, and just about everybody has this done. Everybody who has an 05 or 06 Ford GT has these parts replaced. With the one we're working on, the owner couldn't find any record of the recall being done at Ford or of the bolts being swapped out. And we did the first side of it before we started filming, and that went really smooth. There were no issues. As we set up filming on the driver's side of the car, you'll see that things didn't quite go the same way. So when the video starts, I'll be in different clothes. Because it was a different day, we did not have the tools we needed there on site to finish the job. So the guys from Hellhound Garage, thankfully, are just down the street, and they were headed into town and were able to pick up the teeny tiny little drill bit and screw extractors that we needed to get that job done. They took care of that part, thankfully, and I am headed back to the garage right now to finish the job of putting that all back together and checking out the car so we can be done with it. So stay tuned, fun video, lot to learn, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks. So we're getting ready to change the half shaft bolts, which are a known failure point on the 05 and 06 Ford GTs, and there are no other videos of this on the internet. So we're gonna walk you through basically step by step and show you what it takes to swap those out. So first step is removing the wheels. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, see if we can focus in on them. We've got to remove these 6 Torx bolts there, and they are a T50, and there's 2 more underneath there. So we put the transmission in neutral and take the emergency brake off to rotate it, and then we lock it back in to break each one loose. And we'll break each one of them loose a little bit, go all the way around, and then we'll come back and take all of them out. All right. So you put it in there and you brace it and you turn it left and you pray that it comes loose. And then you just repeat. Lock it in, get good and snug inside. And that one came loose. All right, on to the next. And you have to repeat that every single time. You have to stick it in there, brace it, and then hold your breath and hope that it comes loose and doesn't just strip.
This actually All right, you ready for the break off?
No, leave it on for just a second. I'm able to get it. I think I'm able to get all of them.
This is an important roll right here. You gotta have a break.
We got them all broken loose. Now we're just going to take them out. Just whispering to me. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for them new axle bolts. I appreciate that so much. All right, so we're down here inside. We're just gonna take this half shaft, pull it in, really towards the outside of the car, a little bit towards the wheel surface. That separates it, and then we'll push it out of the way, and it just tucks up in there, and you can see those 2 little bolts inside, right up in here, are the 6mm Allen heads that will break loose. And take them out, we'll take those and that plate out, and those are the parts that tend to fail, those two bolts right there. So we'll replace them with the new Accufab parts. That is already broken. That's broken. Pull the camera out here, Nicholas. As you can see, I stuck the Allen head in and that just fell off. So that has already failed, and we'll figure out our plan for getting that the rest of the way out of there. The second one was broken too. As soon as I got the head of the wrench in there and went to move it, it just twisted right off and sheared. What's interesting is we did the other side already before we started videoing. Those were perfectly fine. No issues at all. But on this side, both of these half shaft bolts were already sheared off. You can see, I don't know if you can focus, there's a little bit of barb left. That's all that was holding it on in there. Just on this one, the other one was already broken. Think of the views! We're gonna get so many views! So once those are out, we have to get the old Loctite out, and that's one of the things that can cause failure down the road if you don't get those threads good and cleaned. But we don't want to use a tap inside there, because that can carve out the threads in the hole, and that would just weaken it. So what we use instead is just this handy M8 by 1.25 bolt from Home Depot, and we put it on the grinder and cut a V into the shaft of it and rounded down the edges, and we can use that as a thread chaser to just get in there and scrape out the Loctite that would be left in the threads. But this would come out and have a bunch of crud and black stuff on it, and then you'd use just some brake clean with a hose, get in there and flush it out, and then you can move forward with reinstalling the new parts.
Good now.
All right, so to give you guys an idea of outside of the car, what we're dealing with, this is the output flange from the transaxle. The little stub shaft coming out of the transaxle goes in here, and it has the teeth, and that rests up against it. This flange right here is where the half shaft bolts go in. The part that fails is what's inside of here. The washer goes in and holds this, threads into the output shaft and holds that together. And so this is what fails. When those bolt heads fail, this starts to walk. And it won't necessarily come all the way off, but it starts to walk, and then all of that torque that should be across the whole splines is just across a little bit of them, and that's when things start to get expensive. All right, so the next step, before we put these in, we've got to put just a little drop of blue Loctite on it as well. And then we'll put the Loctite on, get the new washer, that'll go through, and we're just gonna snug them up at first because there are torque specs that Accufab provides, and we'll actually torque those in before we do the rest. Torque each bolt to 24 to 27 foot-pounds. Check torque twice, and then reheat in microwave. Torques. This is my favorite part, an undisclosed value of supercar and a $38 torque wrench. But it works, and it saves more money for cars. That's a tip, kids. Don't spend a lot of money on tools, but spend a lot of money on cars. Work. All right. The next part is attaching these new fancy pants. Well, they're stuck on, so that's going to take a second to get that off. But these new fancy pants bolts from Accufab to hold the half shaft flange to the output flange. And there's a whole little sequence for that we'll talk about once we get them put in. This is just helping us know the sequence to tighten down the bolts once we put them on. These are the mistakes. Talking and doing things causes mistakes.
Dang.
Hey Nick,
Hey.
you on your stool?
Yeah. Well, I'm on a chair. That's kind of scary. Got a gear now.
All
That
right.
took way longer than it should have.
Thank you.
Some sounds.
All right, so the next step, we've got the bolts for the flanges snugged up. Now we're gonna go through with our torque wrench and we're gonna set them to 30 foot-pounds using the sequence. That's why we wrote on it with the Sharpie marker, because that just tells us the sequence to go through. We don't have to keep looking at our paper. We'll do 30 pounds and then we'll go back and torque them to 50 to 55. And while I'm doing that, I have to rotate it. So Nick is gonna go sit in the car and be my brake assist person. All right, so we've got the flange bolts torqued up in there. That's it. All that's left to do is throw the wheel back on, and we're gonna take this out for a drive just to make sure nothing explodes or shatters into a billion pieces. And if it doesn't, we're good. So far so good. We've taken it up to all of 7 miles an hour, and there's no really expensive or sad clunks or crunches or anything like that. So we're going to take it on a test drive and just go through a couple gears, and not anything too hard or too fast, but just make sure it's all good and put back together.
Connected.